Narcissism. I'm sure you've heard that word many times in your life, but probably no more so than in the past couple of years, because there has been tons of discussion about what narcissism is, how to spot a narcissist, and a lot of it has been catered to those who have felt victimized by a narcissist in their life. But here's a deeper question. Do you really know where narcissism comes from? And more importantly, have you identified within yourself why you are attractive to that energy in the first place? If you're curious about that, if you found yourself in relationships where you have been taken advantage of or have felt that way, and you still carry that fear into your new relationships and might be sabotaging relationships and still attracting so-called narcissists, then today's episode is going to be really helpful for you. I bring on my longtime friend, Dr. Doktor, who holds a doctorate in psychology and has worked with thousands of his clients over the past 30 years and has dealt with this wound that can come from being involved in so-called narcissistic situations. If you stay to the end, you're gonna get some real practical tips on how to apply the information so that you begin to feel more power in your life and more freedom. And that way you'll be able to step into your relationships in life with courage, knowing that you have the discernment required in order to assert your boundaries and create true freedom for yourself. All that more in today's episode. I'm your host, Eric Copeland, and welcome to another episode of The Music of Life. I'll see you inside. Dr. Ray, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again. I always feel weird when I say having me again because you didn't really have me, but there you go.
Well, I have you today. Narcissism. You hear a lot about that. We have talked a lot about that. And I was talking with you off camera about how I've noticed that there's so much, there's like a buzz around this word. Like you see, you know, whether it's like, especially surrounding relationships or even in like the political spectrum. And it's just like been this hot button thing where people jump on this, like, you're a narcissist or that's narcissistic. And I think there's this concept that there's certainly like a level to it where you start to enter the territory that can, you know, you start to put labels on like disorders of being, and then now someone is now a narcissist. But then there's narcissism itself, which is more like a spectrum. And I wanted to have, since you have a doctorate in psychology, you've worked with thousands of clients for the past 30 years, you've seen this all the time. There are a lot of misconceptions around what narcissism actually is. And I wanted to clear the air with this. I want people who are watching this by the end of this video to know exactly what that is, why it is, the misconceptions around it, and why that it may not be so as much to worry about as you think, and how to immediately not have to worry about that through reframing really what it is. And I know I'm totally baiting the conversation here, but I know we can deliver on that. So with that, I would just want to throw the ball to you real quick and just have us start off with, based on your experience, what you've learned through experience and your education, what the hell is narcissism and what is it not?
Okay, I'm going to bang this out really quickly. So first off, I have never had a narcissist, a true narcissist, call me for coaching because they had it all figured out. And in clinics worked out as well, that was kind of a joke. You're not going to see a narcissist here because they have it all figured out. And they're detached from their emotions and all these other things that we project onto other people who maybe are not narcissists. So I'm explaining you different versions, what we might see, and people call that narcissism. Okay. So
perfect.
The first one is, which I would say is like maybe a legitimate narcissist. It's pervasive in all relationships. That's the key word, pervasive in all relationships. So it's with their partner, it's at work, it's where they struggle in all interpersonal relationships where there's this lack of empathy. They do make it about them, where people don't feel heard and seen, and they can kind of dominate those relationships in a very manipulative way, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So there's that. And when I say pervasive in all relationships, if you and I spoke about this, Eric, if you're with a man and let's say he has clear boundaries and he knows that you're not a fit, And let's say that you want to still be in that relationship, whatever that reason is, even if it's toxic. And he just says, this is just where I'm at. I hear you, but this is a choice I'm going to make. As a partner, you might say, he's a narcissist. You know, he doesn't care about me. He didn't seem to be empathetic. When I cried, he kind of went the other way. That could be more just with you. And because how you feel about it, you think he is a narcissist, which leads to the other part of that angle is this. There's also the narcissistic wound. And that is where a person could basically say that what he did was all about me. He didn't want to see me or hear me, and that he didn't validate my feelings. I feel this way because of him. He dominated every conversation to, I feel like my needs were not met. And yet that person's not taking any personal responsibility of like all the red flags that were there and how she feels like that she feels about herself. I'm isolated. I'm manipulated. I'm alone. He did this to me. That is an inward experience of which we can call also a narcissistic wound, where a person is doing it to him or herself. There's that experience. And then there's different other ones. I'll give just one more. There's the idea where a person shows up happy. He's sharing what he did that day to where his life might appear better on Facebook or YouTube. And people go, he's a narcissist. And I see that more in a culture where, because there's a lot of people have a propensity to commiserate with the victim. So if you're not doing as well as that person, you might project onto that person. They're just bragging about themselves rather than just sharing their family pictures. I have been labeled that a few times, not with people I know as friends, but in social media. You know, here we go again. You're sharing about your great life. What is interesting is that sometimes I'd get a private message. Sorry about that. You know, I was triggered because, you know, my life sucks right now. So, you know, those are different variations of what we kind of witness. And that when I talked about the narcissistic wound, that is a very common thing I witness. And that's typically, I see more with women, and they talk about men. One more asshole I dated, another narcissistic man. And most people are not challenging that friend and asking her, why is it that you only meet narcissists? How is it that of all the men that are out there, yes, there are women who are watching this and going, have you seen the jerks out there? Yes, I understand that. But why is this one person always meeting this particular type of man? What if it has to do with her consciousness? What if it has to do with her not taking personal responsibility? And no, to women or people who commiserate with victimhood, I'm not dismissing that's happening. What I'm saying is that they're working with many clients who talk about, who come to me and said, God, this guy's an asshole. He did this to me. Not once or a few times, every time the red flags were there. Every time that person had some issues, trauma in their childhood, to where their sense of self was very, very negative. And therefore, because it's unhealed, whoever they dated elicited those dark feelings and thoughts they had about themselves anyway. But what they end up doing is projecting that onto the perpetrator as if he did it to them. He did it to her. Do you understand? So when we have unhealed trauma and when we get into relationships, that stuff will come up. And if we haven't taken personal responsibility and integrated that, then it'll show up in every relationship. Now, here's another thing, is that the reason why this has kind of come up, particularly now for maybe the last 5-10 years, where people are saying, he's a narcissist, that's very narcissistic, is because this entered pop culture. This entered our collective narrative of this is the reason why. One more reason to blame problems, you know, such as kids being maybe a little bit restless in the 90s to, oh my, it's got to be ADD or ADHD. It's where we're always, for whatever reason, particularly say, with the news and the collective narratives that we see, there's also oftentimes, don't want to go off topic, but There's often the pharmaceutical companies behind it also. There's some agenda that's driving this narrative. And when people don't learn how to take personal responsibility, what happens is that they attach whatever they think is going on onto that reason. So narcissism is just one of those things.
I was reading, because I remember, narcissism, the word comes from the Greek god Narcissus, and who is, a hunter and was self-serving and considered like vain and so interested in looking at himself in the mirror, or, achieving the result that he would mow over other people's, well-being and whatnot. But it also says that Sigmund Freud, who was kind of had Jung and Freud, and I'm a little biased towards Jung, but Freud obviously had his contributions as well. He talked about like narcissism being a natural stage of development as a child, in the sense that when you're a child, because of you truly are powerless, you're going to meet your needs through, you're going to learn that your emotions generate a response to have your needs met by people around you, but you're supposed to grow out of that phase where you're getting your needs met by, let's say, manipulation of others, right? And I think what you're saying in regards to like the relationships with where you see this common theme that's in the world right now, in the dating world and relationship world, and let's be real, it's not that it's always this way, but if we look at a bell curve, you're going to hear more women talking about feeling victimized by a narcissist than the other way around, even though it does happen both ways because it's a universal trait. But it seems like what you're saying is that when, if you're someone, whether man or woman, I guess, if you were in a relationship with someone you perceive to be a narcissist and you feel wounded by that, then in a way you're still playing the same game of the narcissist, because you're meeting your emotional needs, which was being seen, or maybe having someone. And originally when that relationship started, that domineering energy might have been erotic to you, and you actually were very attracted to it, felt very familiar. But when it doesn't result in but then you don't have the boundaries. When you don't feel good, you don't express it, or you don't feel the power to go meet your needs elsewhere, then you feel upset that this person, in other words, you created this expectation that this person should have met your needs in that area, instead of just accepting them where they're at, which is maybe they're in a place where they're not able to or willing to meet your needs,
Doesn't that sound? It's really tricky, dude, that you went right there and you made it a lot easier for me, because you said this person, this parent, your past parent. So let's go back into the infantile stages, and you brought up Freud. So cool you went there, because I made a video about this and it really triggered a lot of people who believe that everyone's a narcissist. Particularly when I was trying to describe an actual narcissist. And the way I described it was this. I said, I go, if this person you say was a child, meaning a healthy child, meaning that when they entered a room, they expected everyone to look at him, they expect you to get his needs met by his food, the basics, change his diaper. And if he were not getting his needs met, he would cry. He would do whatever he can to get that. It's true that he is wanting all the attention to get his basic needs, whether it's food or emotional needs, okay? Now, in that experience, that he or she is learning how to become more independent. She or he needs to recognize that other people have their needs to get met as well. They need to recognize that the world doesn't revolve around him or her, okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. And people wonder, why is it that there's more men who seem to exhibit these traits? And so imagine this boy who is being raised by a single mother, and this doesn't go against, I'm dating someone who's a single mother, but that I'm kind of typecasting because I've actually seen it more in that situation where the mother might feel inadequate because she doesn't have a partner, or the partner is not contributing, and so forth. So she tries to do everything to overcompensate, to where she even projects onto the child that he's crying more because daddy's not there, and so she doesn't want him to feel pain. So instead of this kid learning how to deal with life and disappointment, that he starts getting his needs met no matter what. When he cries, and rather than letting him feel what feeling bad feels like, she kind of goes, it's okay. She goes back in there and maybe gives him a cookie, so where he can't sit with that emotion, to where he's doing his laundry, to where he's 11, 12, 13 years old, that this is still happening. So this is like, in his mind, this is just how life is. And then when he starts to date, more than often, he'll end up attracting a woman who will do his dishes, will wash his clothes, and he'll show up that way. He hasn't grown up. So is this person a true narcissist? Like, does he have the consciousness or the awareness going, I'm hurting others, or it's always about me? Or is he running a program that all he's come to know? Do you understand? So, so it's true that there are a lot of men. I'll say it. There are more men I see with these characteristics than women. And I think it might be this, okay? It could be that maybe women are a little more nurturing. Maybe they're more empathetic and compassionate. Maybe they show up better as parents. I don't know, but, she's trying to do her best. Yeah. And so, but the way that becomes integrated in his psyche is that this is how the world is. Now, one other thing that is a little bit different is that I have worked even recently with a man who was raised in a culture where, the man, the first boy, was considered like a prince. And so the sisters looked up, worshiped him. He was treated more special in the family, like literally, to where when he would date women, he expected that. And I met him with a woman who said, this is not the real world. I am not your slave. I am not your mother. Strong women will not tolerate this. You are an asshole. I mean, she broke up with him, but like he literally would attract women he could manipulate, who didn't have strong boundaries.
Yeah, let me inject here on that, because this is I think relationships is a great context to discuss this topic, because I think everyone can relate to relationships, right? You have them, whether family, friendships, romantic, and so on. In learning, in my, adventure in learning about myself and attraction and women and, the dynamics of the kind of polarity that there is between men and women, I do believe there is a polarity. I mean, you can see it in our biology. Not that there's rigid dogmatic roles, but there is a polarity. And I think it's a beautiful thing. It's an opportunity to make dancing fun, But what some really sound advice I've gotten that I think will protect any person from a lot of the drama, aka karma, of getting involved in these long-term relationships where you feel like, say, you're a doormat, where your needs aren't heard, where your feelings aren't valued, is I've noticed there's weaknesses on the side of men today, and there's weaknesses on the side of women, and these weaknesses mirror each other. And again, I'm very, very general here, but just if you're listening, just scan for yourself whether this is true for you or not. On the side of a lot of women, in my experience, when I've heard them, talk about these challenges, and I do have sisters, the advice that I've seen be effective is to really pay attention when you feel those red flags early on, when you feel that you're, you may feel a little triggered, you may feel whatever it may be. If you can shift in, I know, Ray, you'll resonate. I mean, this is what you teach, using I language, and ask yourself, I just boil it down to how you feel. Like, I feel sad, or I don't feel good. And if you will communicate to a man with I language, this is how, if you want to know whether you should be with a guy or not, if you want to really test a man, instead of telling him what you want him to do or change, tell him only how you feel, and pay attention to whether he's emotionally reactive to how you feel, or whether he begins to offer solutions. If he offers solutions, then then like he cares about like making peace and doing something about it. And that's like maybe an example would be, I don't feel good about not knowing what our status is, as a relationship. Instead of saying, how come you haven't told me, some accusation, say, I feel unsafe moving forward with you, not knowing where we stand, to which he might say, well, give me some time to think about it, again, give him the space to ruminate and come back and say, look, here's what I want. I think, a man who cares about you is going to tell you the truth about where he's at as well. But in a way, the woman is like leading with the feelings, and the man is leading with the thinking in general. Like there's a nuance to this, but in general, it's a good training wheels to put on. And for men, what men will often do, and this is the weakness of men. So women today will not do this. They will not just say they feel like I'm imposing upon him. This is inconvenient. I'm being too much of a trouble. And then the resentment starts to build over time, and you get these situations. On the side of men, what I see them do is they'll often lack the courage to confess what they really want or are really thinking. And by not being really clear with where they're headed and what their intentions are, even if it's like, hey, I think you're beautiful, and honestly, I'm feeling really turned on right now. I'm like, I'm having some reptile thoughts about you in the bed right now. That's like, I'm wanting sex. Okay. Or, I'm wanting to date right now. Or with you, I want to see you again though. I want to see you this Friday at 7 p.m. Like being very clear with what you want without asking anything of her gives her the opportunity to accept that invitation or not. But men today will often not. They'll go and they'll cheat on a girl when they could have just said, hey, I think that we might need to take some space, or I'm like, he won't say what it is that he's really thinking or even feeling as well. And it's that lack of communication that, leads to these things. So I'm going to turn the ball back to you, but like, how does a person I know you talk about projection, you talk about the eye language. How does the person shift into having the confidence, whether they're a man or a woman, to speak like their truth in these situations? And how does that relate to protecting them from so-called narcissist or narcissism?
Well, in my book, All You Need Is One, which is specifically about hidden beliefs. And as an example, a person would project even onto you, whether it's a man or woman. The man might say, there's no way I can do that, dude. I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. Well, mm-hmm. You can't, that's the surface part of it. It would go, what would you have to feel about yourself to be afraid? I'm afraid she'll reject me. I'm afraid she'll look at me like a fool. Like with this little process, there's different little, in my book, it has this process how to do that. But the person, what they'll do is because again, our feelings that we have is based off our consciousness. Now I'm going to say this again in a different way. Consciousness precedes emotions. Consciousness precedes emotions. And one more time, consciousness precedes emotions. And that's this. When you start asking yourself these questions, such as, what is ultimately your greatest fear of sharing with your woman what you want? I am afraid to date again. I don't feel good enough. What do you need to do to start thinking and feeling about yourself to make yourself start feeling more worthy and attractive? I need to go to the gym. I need to stop drinking. I need to treat myself better. I need to hang out with healthier people. There could be all these actions, or it could be writing in a journal to just start having better thoughts about yourself. But it goes back to that. When you change those things, again, you're changing your consciousness. If you change your consciousness, when you approach your woman or next potential partner, you're not going to have those heavy feelings in your body because you shifted your consciousness. Therefore, it'll be easier. Like that. So for women, who have dated men who manipulate them, who don't show up to, and when say and this is a common one, that they'll blame the woman all the time for what the problem is. And that woman will second guess herself. And yet all her friends are saying, he's a fucking asshole, leave him. But she's still second guessing herself. And this happened recently. So, but her outward projection was this: he's doing the best that he can. I know I can find better. It's rather than saying I
see his heart.
Yeah. I see his potentiality, rather than saying, what am I really feeling about myself? Why don't I trust myself? Why don't I trust my decisions? And with those situations, the common one is that I don't know if I can make the right choices. I'm afraid to meet a shitty boyfriend again. I'm afraid to be alone. Well, if you own that and transform that, again, you alleviate the emotions, the tension, and so forth. So when you go back out there and date men, you don't have that residue in your body. You can clearly say, this is just not a fit. It might even be in real time where you're with this person. You might even end the date a little bit early. You might just say, you know, I think you're a great person, but I think we just have a misalignment. I just, you know, it's because the way he's talking about himself, he might say something that's a huge red flag, and there's nothing wrong to assert that. When you know, you just know. I mean, like most of us go to sleep knowing that the sun's going to come out. Well, when you transform your consciousness and you start to date again, you just know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. But you got to, it's an inner job.
Yeah. What comes up for me, I'm thinking of like situations that how people can take even what you're saying and, you know, without practice, like totally still bypass themselves. So where they might say, okay, you know, I need boundaries, and then boundaries can turn into like, well, I need to find someone that's exactly right for me, that and where I don't have to have any accountability for myself and make any changes about myself. And so you know, and I could see, particularly if you're like, say, very attractive, let's say you're classically, you know, a beautiful woman, you know, you probably get endless dating opportunities, but none of them actually challenge you, you know, like, or as soon as you feel any tension or accountability come up, you might say, well, I'm going to jump to the next thing, you know?
You know, I had a situation. So here's the thing. So I had a situation, you and I know this person, I'm not going to say her name, who I had a healthy conversation with her, and in the conversation, she tried to create drama between us, and it did create drama between this. We had a kind of a triangle thing kind of going on, and I fucking saw it. I saw it because I know myself and I know my boundaries, no matter what she said and how it was, because she was in trauma response and she was almost creating a situation that would create drama, which she's used to. And I stood out of it. Because I have strong boundaries, I never went there. And I communicated that with you to my best ability at the time, that this person actually is manipulative, you know?
Yeah.
And so what was interesting is that this is a situation that could have led to, say, a narcissistic wound where I reject her or I say something negative, or if I were to get involved with that, then I would have crossed my own red flags and just, I would be at fault for whatever drama would be created from that. And so the reason I'm bringing this up in this share here is that, again, we all have to know what our why is in a relationship. And that why cannot be a basic, I just want to have sex. I just want to have a companion. I want someone to share my stories with. I want someone just to love me for who I am. Those are things that you can experience within yourself, and even with like friends. Now, we talked about maybe we didn't, another form of narcissism where it's like a person is trying to create self-love. Okay. So for example, you talked about the character, you know, narcissist who like looks in the mirror, like he walks by the pond and sees himself. You know what's interesting about this is that if you have a child, and you see, like when my son looked at himself in the mirror and he put his hand up and he touched his own hand, oh my God, it was the most beautiful thing. And it was cool for him to see, oh, I'm a human. Oh, this is what it might look like. To, I would want him to have a positive image of himself.
A
positive image of himself. You know, rather than go, I'm overweight or I need improvement. All he saw was pure love. Like, wow, that's me. That's me.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
And you want to know what your me is, who you are. So when you date people and they're saying what you are, or they're projecting onto you their fantasies, to their want you to cross your boundaries, if you have good, healthy self-love, you can say, wait a minute, that's who I am is not going to be able to expand in this partnership. Who I authentically really am is not going to flow. And therefore, what happens is that most people bypass that because they're lonely. Their loneliness connects to that pathetic story he's telling, that he's told every woman. They're afraid to speak up, shows up in that relationship when he is trying to manipulate her. You know what I mean? So there's always this experience where the perpetrator, there's this idea that there's for sure is a perpetrator and a victim. But if you look at the story of, they say, the victim, they're participating. I mean, they are participating. And I'm not talking about a person who's passed out and a guy attacks you, or you're walking around a corner and someone just physically tackles you. I'm talking about when you have that pause to say, is this working for me? What does my body feel? And like what you said, Eric, I'm not feeling close to you. I feel like you don't hear me. I'm having an experience that's all about you.
Yeah.
Those, and what you said.
Like, if the guy turns abusive, well, that's you, whatever he says, right? Then there's your sign that he's being a little boy, right? So why not? Yeah. That's the thing we're saying is like, we're just as much like accountability is across the board, men and women. But the reason, like, let's talk about the accountability thing, because people, accountable to what? Well, you say you want to, people say, I want to find someone who accepts me for who I am. But if you aren't accepting you for who you are, including admitting to yourself the areas where you don't feel safe or grounded or secure, then if you're bypassing that part of you that doesn't feel safe, if you're not listening to it, and you don't have the skill set, and this is the thing that people that need to know, it is like this. Ultimately, what happens is you have conflicts that arise, which are inevitable in life, because again, the word conflict means, the root word just means to strike together. So it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's just like things strike together, and things strike together, they rub off on each other. They are to sharpen a blade, you must strike it together with the stone. It's like conflict can sharpen. And I think when you have unresolved conflicts, you get this concept of the wound, right? But there is a skill set with
narcissistic wound. Yeah, you get it.
Yes, yeah, right. So it's unresolved conflict creates the narcissistic wound. But if you want to stop being wounded, then getting better at conflict paradoxically creates more peace in your life, because what you're learning is that there's a skill set to communication. Diplomacy, negotiation, skill set requires two people to be honest about what they're thinking and feeling, to lay those things on the table without judgment of the other and see if there's an opportunity for the puzzle pieces to fit, and being honest if there isn't, and giving each other the space to walk away without any wounds if not. That's what needs to happen, like in whether it's a business, a friendship, a romantic relationship. Just I think with romantic relationships, we get so invested. You have the sexual energy that is deeply intimate, deeply primal, that can kind of color our judgment a lot of times, because we have not developed skill sets around the management of that intense energy, because culturally there's reasons for it. So in a way, you're in a way a victim to what you don't know, but you need to hold you need to hold yourself accountable to your capacity to learn it and to get the wisdom and be open and see it as an opportunity to bring peace in your life by surrendering your ego and being willing to learn something new. So if you're struggling with relationships and learning how to properly communicate in a relationship and have boundaries is a worthwhile pursuit, and seeking wisdom and coaching and things on people that have figured those things out through their own, pains. People have figured things out. Humans have learned a lot of things when it comes to it's amazing how much information like that you have and others that's available for how to heal yourself and your relationships. It's sitting right there waiting for you to ingest it, but people resist it because it requires you to confront those deep wounds within yourself, which really is just a craving for a sense of safety, and the safety is available to you. If you will reach out, you can learn it, you know?
Yeah, it's beliefs
about this at all.
Well, we have hidden beliefs that hold all of that, those beliefs together. And one of my chapters, it's the 11 influencers of, like, say, our modern culture. And there's a section about sexuality. There's a section about relationships. There's a section about our childhood, but it's basically the main 11 issues that come up when people work with me with coaching. And so if we have a strong belief and it's not even ours, it came from our ancestors, it's outdated, and there's expectations that are on there that are not being met, we can think we're failing. We need to examine that. In my book, you'll go through a process where there's 5 questions after each section. Like, even there's a part about religion, because religion isn't necessarily like inherently bad, because I think, like, at least I'm making a generalization because I don't know all people on this planet, but at least in my inner circles, it seems like even you, who you're like a, recovered Mormon, that people who end up finding what works in them out of spirituality will take, like, the positive aspects from maybe how they were raised, whether it's Buddhism or Judaism and so forth. So we're here to basically create what works for us, even when it comes to spirituality. And if you don't know that, what you'll typically hear is, I hate the Christian church, or I'm never going to do that again because my pastor was inappropriate. And instead of going, creating what works for you and your connection to spirituality, even if it's just going into nature or taking a walk with your dog, until you do that, you're basically, it's a shadow that's unhealed. Therefore, anytime anyone talks about spirituality, you might go, oh my God, oh my God. And so whether it's spirituality or relationships, we got to figure out what our why is. And we got to discover what our hidden beliefs are to formulate what works for us, what serves us right now.
This reminds me of, and by the way, I know, so I'll put a link to the book or the ability to get on the wait list for it, because this probably will come out before it's officially released. At least I think that'll be April 17th, 2024. It is March 19th as of our filming day today. But I'll put a link for those of you who want to check that out. But what, one of the, I'm going to go a little bit into the metaphysics or the esoteric, just a little dip, and how this kind of reinforces this, because I think it offers a nice perspective. One of the cool things I learned was, like, when you start to think about life and perceive life as a mirror. So as an objective mirror, not a judgmental mirror, but an honest mirror. Just like if you stand in front of the mirror and you see a reflection in the mirror, if there's something that you want to change, you don't do it at the level of the mirror, right? You don't draw a smile in the mirror or put money, like whatever it is. It's a reflection, right? And so a reflection of what? You would say, how is life a mirror? What is a reflection of? Well, I could go down the rabbit hole of, like, how, quantum physics and metaphysics and all that, but just think of as a concept of how this can be true in your life. Think of this like the fact that we even our brains in I think it was just in the 2000s, actually, we just discovered, mirror neurons in the human brain, so that whenever you see someone, for example, get injured or smiling or whatever, we have a place in our brain that echoes and lights up. And it's notice, if you look at both of the people's brain, the person smiling and the person viewing the smiling, and the person's brain is viewing the other person smiling at them, their brain will light up in that same place, which will then result often in you smiling as well. There's a mirroring effect going on all the time. That's just one example of it. And you can go really deep with this concept, but just keep it simple and think, like, if life is a mirror and everything around you is a reflection of how you are, everything is a reflection of you in some way. And typically it's going to be one of two ways. One, it's either you, if you're getting people to say not smiling, you feel like you're never invited anywhere, or, people are mean to you or you're whatever, then look at yourself and ask yourself, how often do I invite people to things? How often am I acting like what I expect others to treat me? Right? Am I leading? Can I be a leader? Can I smile first? Can I invite first? Can I that? And that will actually be your medicine, right? In that situation, is to change the reflection yeah.
The mirror analogy is great because you sit there and look at a mirror and go, and you expect it to smile first. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah, smile first. Yeah. And what you'll find, and if you start to practice this, what you'll confront, your fears will come up, your resistance to it will come up, and you have to say, is the opportunity here to give in to the fears and still wait for the other people to smile? Or is the opportunity to face the fear and smile and see what happens? That's like the simple level. The next level is judgment. What we judge, we see more of. We tune our reticular activating system into seeing more of what we judge. So if we're very triggered by a certain type of behavior in people, so for example, victims are like a person, not a victim of a crime, but like people who have the narcissist or feel wounded by, let's just say the narcissist in this case for this discussion. They will see the narcissist as the behaviors of the narcissist, like only going for what they want, only interested in themselves. Ironically, if the person who feels wounded would embody some of those qualities themselves, maybe what this life is the mirror is showing me is that I judge people who have boundaries, who go for what they want and assert it. And if I'm being honest with myself, I feel deeply unsafe and uncomfortable doing that. I just was never taught how to do that. And it feels unsafe to me. It feels awkward. And I wish someone would just handle that part of my life for me. And then you start to realize, well, there's my blind spot. I'm judging the very quality that I need to maybe practice and embody and see if there's some benefits to it in my life and stop resisting it.
There is the hidden belief. That's what I call hidden beliefs. There's an exercise that I typically would have women do more than men. And this is back in early 2000 when it's just say it's before Bill Cosby. I mean, I used to work with a lot more women after that whole Me Too thing and so forth. And so I would lead workshops where I was the only man there. And one of the exercises, what they were to do when they would go home would be, and I've given them a script. And it would be where they would unclothe themselves, they would look at a mirror, and they were to love every part of their body, but also become aware of how they're judging their body, such as I don't have big enough boobs, to my belly could be smaller, I look older, I'm wrinkly, all these different things. So how they would counteract that by, it would be says who. Says who. And oftentimes what would come up is the projections of how we like have billboards of, say, beautiful, what we consider collectively as beautiful women, or there is the makeup companies who are saying this is how you should look to be accepted and valued. And they would break through that to recognize, oh, almost every thought or negative belief I've come to know about myself is from others, and I've just believed that. So now I'm going to love myself looking at this mirror from a place of innocence, the same way I mentioned that my son did. Because just say this, if my son were to be a little bit overweight or something, he wouldn't even know it until he learned it. He wouldn't know it until he learned it. He would, until his parents were saying, you need to lose weight, or why don't you look like so-and-so? So we want to have a pure mirror, a pure perspective of ourselves. And when we do have that, whether we're talking about business or relationships or anything that's really important to us, it's a lot easier because, sure, we want to move in that direction to create that partnership, to have that experience, but it might not be a fit to us. But who's the authentic us, the we? We need to figure out who that is, not this idea that we think is who we are by our past failures, or how our parents treated us, or by the trophies we won, or other accomplishments that people say that define us. We need to define ourselves with love and compassion.
Yeah, that's great. The mirror work stuff, I've done some of that, and I mean, and I also, just the thing to add here is most of this is going to come around self-forgiveness and grace and compassion. And also we can laugh about it. Like, this is one of the great things of comedy, you know, and like, you know, guys, we like to roast each other a lot. We do that because it's a way of keeping us emotionally resilient. You know, we laugh about our human frailties and insecurities, or, you know, like I'm as human can possibly be. Like, I absolutely know that, like, if you have a brain and you have the human biology and you have a subconscious mind and you have a part of you that you have these innate desires to fit in, to be enough, to be loved. These are natural, irreducible desires. You're going to, and when society is trying to teach you strategies for meeting those desires that are ineffective, it's you know, difficult to not conform with those invalid strategies, because we tend to like want to feel safe by doing what the crowd's doing. There's a lot of forces that kind of pull on us. So it's more of a reason to have that one-to-one space with yourself where you can, you know, be the first biggest fan and supporter of yourself and also your biggest coach by keeping yourself very honest. Like, don't notice when you're judging yourself, or not letting yourself move towards safety when you feel unsafe, for example, or express your feelings, or bypassing yourself. And that can take some, I think, Ray, just something I want to add, you know, inject here too, is there is, to just from a compassion standpoint, to empathize with, we are in particularly challenging times around this area, where there are a lot of mixed messages. There are a lot of people's dirty laundry and shadows and triggering and stuff is coming to the surface. But again, don't be even choosing not to be a victim to that there is actual opportunity in it. Because if you can find yourself and be strong now, and be honest with yourself now, and connect to the truth of who you are now in times like these, like that creates real strength spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. You know, we're in a gym we got a big load on the chest, but we can lift that off our chest and gain some strength in the process, so that it's not that heavy anymore.
You talk about comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So I live in an area where people are pretty extra sensitive, and there's this propensity to like just be kind. Everything's kind, mm-hmm. which I understand, but I prefer real over kind.
Maybe they're being nice, not kind.
Yeah, maybe. I don't.
Kindness is truthful. Niceness is bypassing. Yeah, that's how I view it.
I like that. I'll steal that from you now. So
$5.
So when my son, and listen to how I say this now, when my son messes up on something, he might say, "Oh my God, I suck." I have seen other adults go, "Oh no, you don't," and he's like, he is not taking himself so seriously. It's great. Yeah. We are all about self-deprecation. When I was walking with someone here and we were talking, and I happened to say that also, an actual adult who's 40 years old. I said, "Man, it's not my strength. I kind of suck at that." He said, "Oh, I'm sure you can get better at it." Like this kind of people pleasing thing. What's interesting about that is that's how that person feels about him or herself, bottom line. And that's how that person might, they're revealing how they might get defensive if someone were to point out something, or if they were to not get something right. I'm not that way in my family. In fact, my father's humor is what helped me get through everything. You know, my son is smiling. I smile a lot. And so what you mentioned as being kind or nice, this is another perspective, is that what I see as being so unkind or not really nice is when we think we fail at something, or we didn't do it right, or we're supposed to be perfect, and we judge ourselves. We treat ourselves in a very unkind way. So why not teach children? Why not teach adults how to not take themselves so seriously? So when they're not able to do something, they immediately go to, how can I learn? How can I let this go? How can I ask for help? You know, it's not anything like negative. It's more like an opportunity. So Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I digress a little bit, but like
no. I think
so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My journey in life has involved early development spiritually and becoming more comfortable and feeling safe with like earthly things through time, right? I had spiritual experiences from the age of 8. I mean, even though I was like a gun shooting, I caught venomous snakes and, made homemade, well, let's just say fireworks with, like I did a lot of like dangerous things, climbing trees. I look back now, I was like, no, I was very much a boy, like I was out there like.
Do you think that car you blew up, you were using a firecracker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or the school bus was shot with a cannon. Yeah. No kids in it. Don't worry. But, there was a part of me, and it had to go down in the primal, like the sexual energy that was kind of compartmentalized and didn't feel safe to express because of certain dogmatic beliefs and stuff around that. And so I can very much empathize and have compassion for how confronting those feelings of I don't feel safe means you have to allow yourself to not feel safe and admit that to yourself. I don't feel safe in this relationship, and that's why the thing also I've heard, the thing about your personal truth is that there's no truth in your personal truth. And that's in a scientific sense. You can't have a quantifiable, I mean, it's not like you're trying to quantify it like in a laboratory. Okay. But it's more about honest expression of your current experience of life. And if you can't admit that you don't feel safe in something and you're not conveying that and putting that into the world or in a relationship, you're not creating an opportunity in which that issue can be resolved. If you don't ask for help, you probably won't receive it. If you don't, so if you're in a place where you're feeling like I can't go out and smile, then ask yourself, well, why does that imagine doing it? What comes up in you? Like, I guess you might say, I don't feel lovable. I don't feel like I'm likable. Why do you not feel that? You can ask yourself these questions, like, and dive deep and start to explore like what's going on. And just that process alone, I think, can bring a lot of, is a compassionate process, because the truth is compassionate. And that's the thing you have faith in, but that doesn't mean it doesn't take courage to confront it, because the ego and our survival instincts will often resist it.
Yeah, I have a experience that we can call not feeling safe. You might be surprised, but I'll tell you this. Saying this on video, there's parts of me that feels like, oh, how can this be perceived? Because it can be risky. And when it comes out of my mouth, you'll see why. But I also know this. If I don't say this, we're not, as a culture, going to expand on this. And secondly, someone might be able to offer another perspective that I don't know. Okay. But also, I want to expand on the idea of not feeling safe, because there could be some people that doesn't fit for their language. I'm not a person who typically ever uses that word. I feel unsafe. Okay. Maybe because I'm a narcissist. So, just kidding. But, I was in a sauna, 2 days ago, and there was a black man on the left of me, and here's me, and I'm minority, I'm half Japanese, and there's a white guy right here, and this black guy shot 2 snot rockets out of his nose right on the floor, and where other men would sit. And I looked at the other guy. He looks at me like what the fuck, dude? And we didn't say anything. Okay, the guy leaves, and I said to him straight out, I said, honestly, dude, I was afraid to say anything because the color of his skin. I don't want to come off as sound like a racist. And I live in a culture where there's more BLM banners than anywhere else I've lived. Sorry. I don't know why I use the word played. And it's like 97% white people here. And so anytime anything is shared from just like the perspective of being a considered human being, if a person is of color or something, they can turn that directly into something racist versus like, hey man, you just not, it was gross. So I had the experience of feeling unsafe because I didn't want to be labeled as a racist. And I would have, but if it were a white guy, I would have said something straight out, would have said, hey, you know, like, could you be please considerate? That's kind of blah, 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 and deal with it. Now, the part of me that it was probably more this, it's that I don't want to deal with the drama that can come with this. I have a child. I have a life. This is a moment in time that will, whatever, go away. But then again, it's like, what type of culture are we creating if we don't say something? You know what I mean? Because I think we all want to be considerate, particularly of like our, you know, things that can come out of our body. You know what I mean? So it was nasty. But there's a lot of uncertainty in our planet right now, particularly like, you know, in this time and space where people are afraid to say something, are afraid to be authentic. But so I didn't say something that moment, but I have many times where I've bumped heads with people. I took that risk, you know, and where it came down to is that I live in an area where, maybe it's a generalization, that I didn't feel I'd be supportive. I didn't feel I would be supported, meaning that people seem to placate. They seem to be like moving to the area of like, if this man felt victimized, they would immediately think I was wrong. It would become about like how I hurt him. There wouldn't be a conversation of like, hey, what really happened? And so that's what I didn't feel like I could be supported in that. So I walked away from it.
I'm curious if, are those the hidden beliefs that you feel like you arrived at, or are there still layers to that, you think? Because it kind of still sounds like...
Well, the hidden belief was I didn't feel supported, but the positive one that I wanted to override that was this, and that is, what is my trust in the process of life? I have to learn how to become more authentic, even when it means taking that risk, because we're creating a new earth. And this is
a great illustration of where you get this nuanced difference, I think, between a being, you know, typically, again, I'm being very bell curve stereotypical, but that yang masculine energy in a man, that his strategy for dealing with a situation that way might be to engage in the conflict, whereas the feminine might be to be more passive and just avoidant. Like, it's a nuance, you know, between those situations, because, you know, the truth is, so I'm sure you don't have like, is there any part of you that feels like, shit, I wish I would have said something different, or do I feel like you bypassed yourself because you didn't stand out, or because when you arrived at the belief is like, no, you know, I had a reason for not doing it.
Yeah. I have another funny. Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. Now, after sharing this, people are going to say, maybe you should just avoid saunas, dude, because here's another bizarre story. This is the funny one. And you remember, so I only had 15 minutes left to go pick up my son from school. I had been working with clients, and I went specifically to the gym to do a quick 20-minute workout and get in a sauna. And that was my time to relax and so forth. Oh my God. And there's this guy with long dreadlocks, you know, I'm trying to paint the story a little bit. You know, he looked a little checked out. You know, he sits down in perfect lotus pose, pulls out his cell phone in a room that's like 140 degrees. And I shit you not, he starts playing like death metal, and it's loud, dude. Like it was almost like Jamie Kennedy's Experiment. I thought it was fucking getting punked. And I was like, I immediately like reacted. I says, and I wasn't an asshole, but I said, dude, I go, do you really have to play that? He's like, what? I said, it's a sauna. I like, can you put headphones on? He goes, it's shit. I said, man, I go, most people who come in here usually wear headphones. He just like looked at me. He's like, okay. And he stopped it. And then he said this. He goes, you're here to relax. You don't seem very relaxed. Then he tried to turn around where, like, because my reaction, like I was doing, I wasn't like in a meditative state, but I also can just go, dude, you fucking just, I was in a relaxed place. You just started playing death metal. And of course I reacted. Okay. Of course I reacted to this external stimuli. Okay. But I sat down and I just started going back into my zone, and I had those negative thoughts like, what a fucking douchebag, to like, oh my God, like, in this guy, why are there so many checked out guys, or they were inconsiderate? And I'm thinking, God, I'm making a lot of generalizations. Then I just took pause and went, well, one thing that's certain here that I do know is that I am angry, and I did get angry from that. And I can't blame him for my anger. That's my own anger. And so, and I don't know his story, and me projecting onto him to validate how I feel wasn't going to heal or expand me. So after about 5 minutes went by, I opened up my eyes. I said, I want to say thank you for respecting my boundaries and not playing in music. And you're right. I was angry. Thank you. You know, that was it. I owned it. But his response was, well, I guess I can follow the rules sometime. Rules? It was boundaries, dude. But you know what I mean? So that happened. But I use that as a learning opportunity. And again,
it's an example. It's an example of where conflict's inevitable, because you're in this situation. I'm going to break this down a little bit. You're in a public setting where I don't know if there's an official enforced rule as to that or not, but his argument could be like, well, this is my way to relax, you know, and like,
yeah,
this
exactly.
is my way to relax. So that's the importance of the I language, is like, hey man, I got to be honest. I'm really having trouble concentrating right now because this music is really loud, you know, and like, how, what do you think about an idea where you could wear headphones? We could both relax, like that art of negotiation. And then you have to also accept that some people are just going to be assholes, or they're going to be so triggered by it. And then you might actually just have to fucking leave. You got to be the bigger person, and not get engaged in their like drama. And that can be really difficult in a relationship. I could see this, like, imagine like a man or a woman. Let's just put the woman here is trying to, there's something she wants to say. Hey, I feel like I feel upset whenever you get emotional and don't take the lead. But she may be afraid to say that because she knows as soon as she says that, he's going to get all emotional, and she can use that as her truth as to why she's not going to express her feelings. And so what you're saying is like, no, you have to at least say what your truth is, or act upon your truth. You could have gotten up and left. You said your truth. You handled it how you handled it. And you even like maybe projected and then corrected. I noticed, there's a little bit of a correction that you did there. So like, that's where the grace, kind of comes in, but you still arrive at the result.
You asked me, like, did I regret not saying anything? Not really, because of this, is that maybe I'm still working through it. It was new for me. And it's something it's just not on my radar right now. But if it were to happen again, I think I'll just lean in. What's interesting is that with that conversation is that like my acupuncturist she's white and she's married to a black man. And God, I love her, and her kids are wonderful. And she said to me, she says, I don't want my kids to be treated any different. If they're to be accepted as they are, don't treat them like they're special. Like if they break the rules, say something. She said, I have seen my sons have reported how their friends who are, like, say, of color also can get away with more because people are afraid of this new collective narrative that I'm talking about. And so she's so opposed to it, but she has even brought that up to a conversation. They told her that you're a white woman. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like to be like them. And she said, they've been with me for the last 9 to 12 years. My husband and we share experiences. I want to keep them innocent. And if they have a fight, I want it to be their own, one that they're experiencing and like currently, not something that happened from the past. I want them to remember who they are, but I also don't want projected onto them this collective story that adults are wrestling with that's not them. Let them be innocent children and, you know, live life and to grow and expand from their own experiences, not ours.
Gotcha.
I totally digress on that one, but
no, it's great. So a question, and we'll get this wrapped up soon here, but I have a question for you. So in your opinion, is the drama that we experience as a result of unresolved conflict addictive?
Oh, absolutely. Do you want me to elaborate on that? Elaborate on it?
Sure.
You're smiling. Do you have something to say about that?
No, I mean, I'm baiting you. Like, I know I kind of like have my thoughts on it, but I'm anticipating. I already kind of know what you probably will say, but I want to hear you say it. I just want to know your perspective on it, because you work with so many people on this kind of stuff. Is drama, I guess the question would be, why is drama addictive?
Well, first off, if a person has a neurochemical response in which is familiar, and they label that as, I know this feeling, to it validating kind of what they were experiencing, then it kind of ends a cycle. And what I mean by that is this. So there's a cycle in which victims and perpetrators can go through, and it goes like that. Looks like this. Imagine it's a woman and she has a partner and things are great, and they're in their honeymoon phase again. And then she starts feeling the tension. She wonders, she starts feeling anxiety. When is it going to happen again? When is he going to maybe hit me or yell at me again? So there's this tension. And because there's this pattern of it always happening, being in that unknown of when it's going to happen again starts to become very heavy, to where she literally unconsciously will start baiting him, will say things so she's hit, he explodes, so she can go, yeah, relief. I knew it was going to happen, so she's not hanging on the line. And then also this experience. Right. Yeah, and then also from him brings her chocolates and flowers. I'll never do this again. And they go through this honeymoon phase again, and it just goes like that. So that's kind of like happens with people who experience like domestic violence and so forth. So that answers your question a little bit. Then the other one is this, because I've seen it with even healthy people. These healthy people are, some of these people are my friends. And that is where they're used to just always putting out fires. By watching their parents always go through challenges to move into different places, to where there's always something to have to do or something to fix. When they're sitting at home and like there's literally peace, they start to feel anxiety, because anxiety is what they lived with. So they go to the grocery stores and they somehow get in an argument. They somehow get into it with a new friend. It's where, because it's unhealed and it somehow elicits that from others. It's where sometimes it's a way to release energy because it's all they know. So whether you call it addiction or not, it's just all they've come to know. If you and I are fans of Joe Dispenza, he calls it an addiction. He'll say, like, if you can't control your emotions, then you must be addicted to them. Right? Is that exactly what he says? Something like that?
Yeah. I've even Dr. Pat Allen has called it like you can be what's called a norepinephrine addict. Norepinephrine is the come down off of the adrenaline. So you have the big trigger, like getting hit or the thing that triggers you. And in the only relief you feel is when you're coming down. In other words, you have this big emotional fear spike. And then as you come down off of it, you have the norepinephrine. You have epinephrine, the norepinephrine. And that coming down actually feels like a relief. So your only sense of relief in life is to create drama, to feel the relief on the other side of it, create the drama. And so that becomes, and what happens if you talk to that person, they think, well, this is just how life works. We have bad things happen. You have the thing happen and then you feel the relief. You have the thing, and they don't see a reality in which there can be more mastery where they can have, instead of the pendulum swinging so wide, you can get a a smaller wiggle in that pendulum. And it's literally there's the hidden beliefs and things that block the perception, the ability to see an alternate reality in which that is possible for them. And so usually that's why it often takes a horrible breakup or abuse or really severe pain for someone to get to a point where they admit to themselves that how they're living their life is actually dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you described the chemical response of that cycle I was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Very cool. So, we just to wrap this up, put a little bow on it, and we'll put it back in the frame of the narcissist, the wound, the feeling. We know that someone who's narcissist ain't watching this. They didn't watch it this far. Right? So if you watch this far, you're a person that can identify with like how frustrating it is to be on that emotional roller coaster of the yo-yo, the ups and downs. You can spot that, like, you want like the healthy relationship or what it might be, and you might feel like it just seems like it's just not for you or out of reach, or you just have some kind of relationship with these concepts. You might be even trying to manifest things in your life, and it just feels like it's efforting, like it's trying, and you don't know how to feel actually to embody it and receive it into the nervous system. Can you give a quick overview, Ray, of like, what does the path to recovery on that look like? If you were to give like some steps to that, like what would be like a takeaway someone could start with now? And I know your book was something that will help people self-guide when that comes out. So we'll put a link to that again, but just like a little cliff notes to like, what's that process looks like, so they can kind of maybe create an image of that in their mind.
Okay. I want to say one thing to tie it in.
Sure.
I'm trying to be clever with this. Remember we were talking about the boy who had a single mother or a parent who just helicopter or did everything for him. Those two people I met in the sauna, what if they never learned about others or others' personal spaces?
Mm-hmm.
They were like clueless, both of them, in that experience. Now, if those two men were to date a woman, they might do some of those habits also, spit on the floor. He doesn't care about anyone. He's a narcissist.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't learn. I don't know. But that's how that can tie into that also. I didn't think of it that way. I had a different experience. You know what I mean? But so I just want to tie that into that. So
I would just, I'll just do a little add on to that. What I'm seeing in you is that your ability to be compassionate with yourself allows you to be first, by owning what your experience was, allowed you to then not feel like you're in survival. And now you can see through compassionate lens that, well, maybe they just weren't taught. Right. Yeah. To which resolves that conflict within your body. Like you're not carrying that experience around as like a negative thing anymore. It was actually a learning experience for you.
Yeah.
That's an important point. That's an important point. You grew from the experience, even though it was uncomfortable in the moment. Like you found compassion for yourself, which bled into compassion for them, which resolves the conflict.
Thank you for making me look good. So I missed you asked me a question about that's great. So specifically for like, I'll speak to the people who seem to attract narcissists in their lives. I'll share the most common things that are like what the red flags are and what the inner work looks like. And it's this, what would it be like, this question, literally ask yourself this: what would it feel like to say no and not feel guilty? What would it feel like to say no and not feel guilty? How lighter would your body feel if we're not responsible for someone's happiness or anger? What if everyone's responsible for themselves? What would that feel like? What if
freedom?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's usually a boundary thing. Just plain and simple. And I like to connect boundary with the idea of the neutral energy of masculinity. Most people associate masculinity or femininity with a human body, like a man or a woman. Mm-hmm. And so for me, boundary is something that is a wall. It's guidance. Mm-hmm. It's like a map. So another way to look at this is like, imagine the train being the emotions, and the tracks is like the masculine, the guidance where I want to go with this. So if someone has issues with saying no or has issues with boundaries, there's possibly a part of them that hasn't learned how to be more assertive, to say no with ease, to be able to take direction in her life and take personal responsibility with confidence. So they're still second guessing themselves. They're still lacking confidence, and therefore they need to be able to develop maybe a little more masculinity, whether it's a man or a woman, to be able to develop a healthier relationship with the idea of it's safe to direct your life, and that you teach people how to treat you, bottom line. And if in this me sharing this, she said, I don't know if I can do this. I am afraid. I don't feel safe. Or it's like, I'm afraid what the other person will feel and think. Then it's clear that you need to develop a healthier and better relationship with yourself and recognize that it's safe to be me. It's okay to be me. I need to develop a new relationship with myself to trust I can do this. Because here's one logical question that you can just ask yourself. And if you really espouse to what I'm about to say, you'll go, yeah, it makes sense. If nothing else has been working, like the people-pleasing thing, trying to make him happy, then why not just try this? You know, just try it. Because you've already been rejected by a bunch of men. Hold on. If you've already been rejected by a bunch of men or people that you think are narcissists, then the worst thing going to happen is that you meet people for practice who don't want to respect your boundaries. You meet people who are still trying to tell you that you're wrong. And it may take practice to kind of figure out who your tribe is, to even work with a coach to where you recognize that, oh, I'm just learning how to navigate through people who, that I guess when I grew up as a child might be that my parents didn't have boundaries, and that, oh, I need to learn how to parent myself and know that my needs are important. But until I respect that, no one else is going to.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost always comes down to just some life skill and wisdom that wasn't instilled upon you in your developmental years. And so you have to develop it now. And developing it now feels, we have, as an adult, we project a lot of expectations on ourselves through the voices of others. We see other people's having success in areas where we know that we don't. And it makes us feel like we can project and interpret that as, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not capable. And giving yourself permission to grow is the secret to it, and getting in the waters. And so if you're someone that is hearing us and you're resonating with this, and you can see that there's some truth in it, but you also still know that there's a lot of confusion and that it's intense and it's hard to think clearly whenever you're feeling your so much survival emotions when you start to engage with these things. And this is why coaches exist. Today's coaches was yesterday's shaman, okay, or spiritual teacher. The idea is they're supposed to help you to learn to develop yourself in an area and realize that freedom is actually available to you in that area, even if right now it doesn't feel like that way to you. And what they can provide for you is a container, and let you spend some time moving in that direction with some support so that you have someone actually helping you think clearly about how to love yourself in that area. And that's, I know what you do, Dr. Ray. And what makes this different than a lot of traditional therapy is that it really is a blend of two things. It's the compassion, and sometimes it's going to feel like you just need to cry and let off some the pain of just because you just need to. There's that inner child part that just needs to feel loved, and then there's that fatherly energy that says, now that you feel a little more free, let's practice acting like this new person, and here's a step you can take, and that's called integration, where you're doing it. So if you've run off and you've done your, some people will go and they'll do, therapeutic things like they'll awaken to who they are with maybe even through a psychedelic experience or through a moment of self-realization. But when it comes to the integration and the self-realization needs to move into self-actualization, this is often where these triggers come back up, and then we can feel like we're stuck, and we can often need some steps, some like Betty Crocker recipes to help us get through these like murky moments so that we build enough confidence and momentum in ourselves to be we can take off the training wheels and even develop mastery in that area of life. And just give yourself permission to realize that every human being walking around is underdeveloped in some area of their life. There's a beauty in it as to why we need each other and the value that can come from community. And so it can be a fun process. It's a very enlightening process, an empowering process to kind of surrender to a coaching experience when you're with someone that you trust has your best interest, that is helping you from that place of compassion and has the skill to do it. And Dr. A, I'm just plugging you here. I know that you land right in that pocket. You've worked with over 6,000 clients in the past 30 years. You have a new book out coming as well. Again, we'll pop that link here, and I'll go ahead and put a link to your website as well. Any final words you want to say to the audience?
Look in a mirror and just see how beautiful you are. Truly. That's all. Keep it simple.
Perfect. If you guys have any comments or questions, I would love to hear those. You can go ahead and drop it in the comments. You're either going to be watching this on YouTube or listening or watching on Spotify. If there's any ideas for topics you'd love to have discussed, I would absolutely love to hear those as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. Ray, I appreciate you being on once again, and we'll see you again in the future. And congratulations on the new book coming out April 17th.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. See you later.
Hi, it's Dr. Ray here, and thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your support, and you are the one who drives this channel. So if you like to be notified when new videos come out, please subscribe to my channel and push the bell button so you are notified when new videos come out. I appreciate you supporting this channel.